Shirley here with Sirius Talis Moon. This is Mercury hour on a Mars night, and the ascendant is applying to Mercury, right opposing Pluto, and Moon is 21 degrees Taurus. I want to talk about, and the midheaven is applying to Chiron. I want to talk about the burning of the books, because this is something that happens every once in a while. Apparently it's way more ancient. Okay, from the Maya there were only, I think, 3 or 4 books that survived, and the civilization, as Feynman put it, doesn't even get to choose which. However, on knowledge, so knowledge was usually arranged in certain societies, and as I was having my own chance at editing a Wikipedia, I understood how even the idea of Wikipedia being the encyclopedia of the people was not so working when it came to certain topics. And so in those societies, the knowledge is comprised of the people of a certain bloodline that go through certain rites and rituals, that are allowed to read and write, to practice alchemy, and to gain knowledge and wisdom. Okay, I'm a little bit of a glitch in the matrix in that respect. Okay. Okay, and so the actual reality of knowledge is that in the process of deciding which children will bear the knowledge and which will be the visibles that will transmit the knowledge, whether it's a priesthood or sciences, because they are interrelated, then there is ritual abuse in that junction as well. And so the death of the children comprises to the death of the knowledge, the anonymity of the sovereigns that didn't get to be sovereigns, and they were sacrificed and abused for their, even as infants and as fetus even, for their creative power and their particular talents that people want to consume or to have for themselves. Unfortunately, this also created ritual rape, because the consummation was not with will and consent, and the initial, this is also the root of cannibalism. Okay, because when something is attractive, there is the innate desire to consume it or to be that which is attractive, and at the same time we don't want the flame to extinguish. In the extreme form, this is satanic abuse. In the heart-centered and understanding that the I am has a value, and that which one has the erotic desire for or the ideation of is also a person that is also a human being. Okay, it's kind of like the I am worthy and you are worthy. You have something to bring that I want to erotically indulge in, and I have something to bring that you want to erotically indulge in, and that can absolutely be to the extent that we both indulge in it and are happy in it. But then in its ritualistic forms, it goes into ritual rape. or where a person believes that they don't have the. I think one of the greatest misconceptions is that there are soulless people that cannot create, and they have to invert what is created, because what is created is creative. Even if I take a look at this box of technology that I have the AC in front of me, I have Mercury in the ruler of the seventh, so technology can equate with the partner. And the ascendant is not too far from the big bear. So when people say she chose the bear, I was like, oh, she found the partner. And they talk about violence. I was like, well, isn't the bear the thing that keeps you safe? And so hence the analogy to technology. And if I think about my AC here, is creating certain conditions. For example, it's easier for my AC to work at night because it's cooler. So I awaken, and we can have longer productive time, quality time at night. But then the payback comes, because unlike my AC, I cannot sleep during the day without an AC, and it's hot in the day. So we're gonna have to negotiate that and find a solution. And so with people, it's pretty much the same. But the greatest misconception is like, yeah, if a person went through ritual abuse, they find it difficult to create, and they feel their energy is drained from them. But the origin of that, even if they were cloned, is because they are a sentient being. They have a creative quality to them that was taken away from them, and then they were made to believe that they are soulless by the courtesan, unfortunately also Christian. There's a lot of good things about Christianity, but now we deal with the dark side. Okay? And the courtesan culture of a Christianity that said this person is devilish, they are soulless, this is a ritually satanically abused child, and the deliverance prayer will only bear fruit if the satanic ritual abuse is stopped. And so the more people are like, pray to the, people that went to the Sunday church to get some coffee and have a nice conversation, at best, suddenly, because say the deliverance prayer, suddenly, because it's the spiritual warfare on the line, and they're like, why do I have to say the deliverance prayer all day? And deliverance from what? I did nothing. The devilish forces are after you. Why? They want your light. Okay, why don't they have light? They can, I don't know, pray to Jesus. I don't know. But there's a problem with that. What's the problem? They went through rituals where they were ritually abused and saw an infant being killed, while everybody told them to pray to Jesus, and then they told them to pray to Satan, and they began to have things in their life, but only if they did tremendous crimes. And the deliverance prayer is kind of difficult with that. You mean that thing, that the satanic panic? Yes. So when it comes to the burning of teachings, it is simply put the ending of something that was brought to the world with a trajectory where so many children were sacrificed by the scholar for that scholar to have their decree, and so on. For example, I took a break from academia because those were sacrifices that I was refusing to make on either side. I refused to do plagiarism or to be plagiarized. So this is where the burning of the books, the burning of the teachings came from both fronts. It's both the front that, hey, those people are onto something. They are discovering what's behind the teachings. Or they're discovering the teachings. They're discovering this. And also from the other frontier where those people that did go through the rites and rituals of certification had to perform the sacrifices. For me, I did not finish my magister because I had to be a magi, and to be a magi, I said, only in favor of humanity. It was not something that, it's not like I was in an order or like I was, no, I was in my room writing thesis over the spirit of matter, the mind and matter question, body mind question, in light of philosophy of science and medicine, and how do we know that we know. And then I was exploring for also, okay, other ways of channeling or working with the energy crystals and stuff like that, and tuning in and so on. And I had no idea what the weird rituals that people do, or if I lived with the person that was doing those rituals on me to drain my energy, so that they can create and they don't have to take amphetamines. And then I ended up taking amphetamines. And then I went to essential oils. And there was a time when my first certification in essential oils, I was pondering if I should take amphetamines or not for the exam. It was prescribed. Okay, that's the concerta thing. That's people call it a 10 concerta. And so even when the world of magic or things like Egypt or stuff like that came and said, I only want these things only in favor of humanity. And then I had a colleague that was doing witchy things, and she said, oh, these things, they happen to us because we in past life did things that were against humanity with our witchcraft. And I'm like, we are in this life, I'm not doing anything against humanity, and there's no point of perpetuating that evil. The teeth of the children shall not decay because of the sins of the parents. If we abolish those sins, those crimes, okay, if we abolish those rituals, simply meaning, okay, not doing those rituals of sacrificing another person's livelihood, then we don't have to suffer from the sins of our parents or grandparents because we're not acting like them. That's okay. Um, and in that magister training, I could not finish the certification because I would have to partake in a grand ritual that was unbeknownst to me performed in the department or in the academia, and my soul is not soul is not something that people can trade. Okay, the trade of souls is invalid to begin with. They cannot consent, and nobody can consent to such a thing, and that's important. But people were still trying to do those weird things, and so I physically, in attunement to my body, could not be in that place anymore. And thus my magister certification was not something that I was fighting for, even though I finished all the qualifications and was working on my thesis. So I can tell you that it hasn't changed, and this is why we see the burning of the books. It's both the silencing of information and the fact that much of that gnosis was done after performed rituals that shouldn't have been performed to begin with on sovereigns that had the knowledge. Einstein, for example, the lady that helped him with computation, discovered a lot of the things that were later attributed to Einstein. And so when I was a child, when I was an infant, I was almost killed in an earthquake. So my infant body had the wisdom about earthquakes. And then later my friend would look into, they woke up to a dream about equation, but they would also look into the topic of earthquakes. And there are certain practices that perhaps they were involved with that I don't know anymore how much of that was trying to gain the wisdom from my infant self, or trying to reach my consciousness now. At the same time, they were also incredibly sensitive to the environment and nervous system around them, so they were incredibly susceptible to being the puppet of the puppet and the puppeteer. To be very honest, they're incredibly susceptible to be a kind of an Epstein. Because they're so sensitive to energy, and that usually is the result of ritual abuse. And by the way, when I was going through the Me Too, they were like, hey, that is affecting, I'm afraid you're going to be sick if you stay there. But they were also susceptible to become the abuser, which eventually I had to flee from. And then as they take away from the energy of the other person, and the other person can become susceptible, and so on and so forth. So you think about the burning of the books as that trajectory where so many people that have creative power were reliant upon practices that are completely unnecessary, because but they were trying to get energy from an external force because they were ritually abused. And what happens when you don't respond well? If I go back to conversation with my friend, we had a colleague that was caught with his friend until he was gay, and until he came out of the closet as gay, then they were doing a ritual, and he was a very, very talented mathematician, and he was doing he raped a boy, and filmed it with his friend. Then he was caught, and my friend was telling me about this, and naturally, it was surprising for both of us, but naturally I was not approving of the act. So I was a stabilizing factor in his nervous system for a while, until I began to channel. Um, and he was afraid that I would learn something like Kabbalistic tarot. I didn't learn that eventually. But he was afraid that I would have, and his fear stemmed from the abuse of the power of spirituality, which I had no intention to do. And yet, because of the many rituals that done to drain on my energy, which volitionally and non-volitionally participated in, then what the result would be that essentially I would go away from those rituals and practices, and to the extent that he would go away from these rituals and practices, then he would have whatever his life trajectory. But I had no idea of the many things that person was involved with. This is just one example. And this was people operating through other people. Now, when you put that in the light, which is what I do, then that comes to the forefront. When you keep that under certain masquerade and you don't talk about certain facets of the sciences, then what happens is the burning of the books. And this is because a lot of these teachings, because they ignore how they were conceived, and sometimes it's not on purpose. There is certain dissociation that comes with that, and because of those things, then it's the teachings are outdated. For example, if I would describe to you Aries, and I would say, yes, it's LGBTQ and so on, and if I would look at my colleagues, I would say, okay, that can be a couple of trans people having a willingly consensual orgy. Okay, with Aries and Pluto. I did not imagine that the orgy was non-consensual, neither are they being transgender, and somehow the global intifada plays into the mix of BBB. It's to do with real estate, and I don't want to even continue. Like, when we combine ritual identity and identity politics and national identity, one of my essays was about the use of national identity to the use of psychiatry to create a national identity in the British Empire. It's the myth of psychiatry, because there wasn't actually psychiatry. Um, and then the people were jealous of that science that they have in India. Why don't we have this psychiatry thingy? It's like, you don't want to have this psychiatry thingy. Everybody was like, but Israel, it has the best medicine. They don't pay for that medicine. Do you really want to be in a situation? Because while some people absolutely get good care under best conditions, it's not the situation for everyone. We just yesterday there was another thing in the group in the city of the Seven Wells. There was apparently there's a case in Soroka Hospital where people enter living and that's and die. And one family created a big giant mess, and apparently that's not an unusual case. And I'm like, well, the doctors need to unite with the patients and to go against the MK Ultra, because that's what's causing this. I mean, but this is also pertaining to the burning of the books. I was working at the library in Soroka when I did my thesis proposal of the philosophy of medicine, so I needed to go to the medical library. And you think about the history of medicine. So my doctor, I guess my professor came from Argentina. I don't know if he was a Nazi. Yeah, he did. Um, with a paperclip. This is, but no. But his dissertation had to do with populist leaders, and how populist leaders are actually representative of the people, rather than being something that is considered degraded and so on. But then there's something missing when it comes to politics, which is the occultism and the wealth families consolidating wealth by puppeteering people through ritual abuse. And I began to look at the philosophy of medicine, because he told me that when he reads Feyerabend's philosopher of science, he doesn't know how to treat a patient. I said, I must help my professor MD to treat a patient. And I took on the medical field as a field to explore the relations between science and the actual practice in the eyes of philosophy of science, and that lifted from politics and governance. And everybody told me, you can't do this thesis here. And I said, I have a professor, I have an instructor. Now they're sitting pretty in London with academic freedom. We were pro-Palestine on time. We were pro-Palestine on time. But if you think about the burning of the books, again, I looked into the history of the medicine, and you think about much of the certification process for the medicine. So my professor, he studied medicine in Argentina, and he said there was a lot of mess, and we had to regulate things. We have to figure what is medicine and what is not. And from my perspective, I saw, well, there was a lot of competition. There was a lot, and the models that they came up with, the ANOVA model now, and the more they go to machine learning and deep learning, the more they go to iridiology, to traditional Chinese medicine, to the more complicated and holistic sham medicine, what they call sham medicine. I looked into placebos and the mechanism behind placebos, and many other things, and consuming a shit ton of amphetamines along the way, prescribed. So when I think about the burning of the books, I think about the fact that the missing component to my training, to my professor's training, even in the field of medicine, would be, did you know, for example, that Pfizer was an astrologer? At that time, I was looking into the field of medical astrology began to boom because people were looking into it. It was just, the people were just looking into that. Saturn, Neptune, Jupiter conjoining, sextiling Neptune, transforming the science of medicine and learning about plagues. So we looked at what do our ancestors say, what do this, what do that, and both in the traditional medicine and in the conventional medicine, there are horrors. Okay, for the people that put themselves to quite ritualistic torture to treat cancer over nothing, and then chemotherapy, which is quite ritualistic torture to treat cancer. And German new medicine, okay, fantastic. But if a person has a tumor that needs to be surgery needs to be performed, then they can do that and do love, and that's okay. Okay, because people died horrible deaths with German new medicine as well. And my aromatherapy teachers would ideate German new medicine. You must hear about German new medicine. Now, of course, at the same thing, as Feynman said, he was sitting in Caltech with the best scientists, and they said some of them were making cures for diseases that people thought will never have a cure, and the other part were doing diseases that people will never find a cure to. And that's Feynman sitting at Caltech. Okay, that's he dined with those people. Um, so I also got to dine and have a drink with those people as well. Um, some of them were trying to awaken humanity to rebel, and some of them were trying to create the revolutions that will nullify revolution. Some of them looked into the sciences of earthquake, and the people that look into the truth are like, well, that's nice, but these triangular shapes that are astrological, but they're also the rituals on those shapes, and they do that to try to create for those disasters, not just try to mitigate them. Because I came with a science that could mitigate natural disasters, but it will have to be an all-encompassing thing. For example, I had to learn that, let's say, to tend to earthquakes, then there's a reason the ground is shaking, and what is the underground thing? Well, there's ritual satanic abuse going underground. So, because when I said it's very simply put, from a scientist's point of view, if we go into the soil and we have sensors and we sense when something is heating up and so on, that we can cool the temperature or we can intervene in the particular points, the same way we created the something that regulates the heartbeat using chaos theory. We use the right intervals of interference, and we regulated the temperature. There's only one problem with that, is that if we do that, we discover that the skibidi toilet, and the skibidi toilet is the people in the CIA tunnels. And the professor I went to with my friend with that, they weren't, and my friend was like, don't tell people about that, don't tell people about that, don't tell. Okay, if they were in some sort of orders, I don't know, but if those orders wanted to were practicing those practices, then I could not. And I saw that many people looked into earthquake and they had no breakthrough. And it was something that people were afraid to look into the science of. It's kind of like that reminds me of chaos theory. And it was booming in the 60s, that's the boomers. But it was booming because it was used in MK Ultra projects. And then it's like, oh, we can control the weather and this, but people did not want to have their name. If you are an instructor of the thesis, you have your name on that thesis. People did not want to have their name on those theses. And you see, the burning of the books is that where people try to take the creative idea to have that potency, but they try to misuse that or to control that. And then what happens? Their books burn. And the actual science begins to evolve. Now, there are certain trajectories. Where people are doing, sometimes people doing plagiat and they don't know, and sometimes people are doing plagiat and they do know. And then what happens is that then there are the people that reach something at the same time. Okay? When I talked about the Dirac-Fermi. Dirac-Fermi was an example of two scientists that looked into something, reached something at the same time, that complementary information about that, and instead of battling an ego battle, they decided to have the Dirac-Fermi equation. Now, for some people, that was genuine. For some people, this is the use of the creative power of one person in favor of ideas that person would not be necessarily approving of. And then people begin to be sovereign. Okay, the golem is becoming sovereign, and those who relied on that person being a golem are facing whatever they did. Okay. And the burning of the books is simply that the fame that was supposed to be around that has an expiration date. Now, some of that can be even after the person's death. Only now we find out that Einstein's the person that did the computation and the mathematics for Einstein, she was also discovering a lot of things because she was tending to those things that Einstein admitted that he couldn't tend to, and he was sharing money with her, but she was not acclaimed, okay, to those titles. And the many people that try to do that, it is the people that do give credit or explain of why, let's say, if I don't say a name of person, it's because they did some weird rituals on me and I had to escape. So it also goes to the point of what I learned from them may have been coming from me. And I'm like, that's cute, but people need to be sovereign. And so the burning of the books, which is going to be a huge topic, also pertains to people say, oh, they burn the teachings that they don't want, and it's not untrue. At the same time, it's not like those teachings that they supposedly don't want were not comprised of certain rituals. Even when I wrote, let's say, my thesis proposal or wrote my essay, okay, I did not do rituals. The articles that I looked into They did, some of them. And so, from my perspective, when I was trying to culminate my thesis, okay, to write my thesis, there was a complete disintegration. And I said, okay, I take the time to learn the topic. And I knew that Uranus is going to go through Taurus, and then it's going to go through Gemini. There's going to be innovation with the mathematics and scientific, and we are entering a scientific revolution. And I wrote it right milliseconds before COVID. But now, in even more bigger perspective, I can say, well, the knowledge that I was reliant on is coming from those ritualized children and people that were plagiarized. And I learned that in the name of one person, but it's actually not necessarily, okay, that person. And it's the people that, there are the people that name drop to say, hey, I got the idea, that person say that person say that. And then there are the people that have authentic relation, okay, and you see that with the life trajectory. This is why I also look into the astrology. Um, and also, people, perhaps it is a good remedy for people if they think to steal ideas from person. They look at the chart and say, I want to have this chart. And it's like, look at the synastry. It's coinciding with you in a certain way. If you treat that as a sovereign being, then you're going to be able to understand what that brings to your life. Okay, for example, for me, if I watch, let's say, a video of a person, I don't need to do a freaking ritual. My nervous system gets the gist, and then I would be attuned in a certain way. For example, when I wrote my thesis proposal, I would listen to Feynman a lot because he had this aggressive intellect that explains something in a way that is very easy to understand. He was giving me these upside down triangles all the time, and I had no idea what they were. But that would be, the pyramid is turning upside down with Pluto in Capricorn, and he was, of course, Mason, and of course he very likely had to participate in those rituals. And so the burning of the books is basically both the extinguishing of knowledge that should not be extinguished. For example, the fact that we know that the last deacon of Mein Kampf, and all the people try for that not to be bespoken. But the last deacon of Mein Kampf discusses this master race that JFK was trying to warn society about, and even Michael Jackson, which completely participated in all these things, tried to warn humanity about. Um, and that is creating a master race that will rule the world. What is more master race than rule the world ideation and evaluation than Saturn Neptune in the world degree of Aries? While Rahu is in Pisces, okay, I believe at least Jupiter is exalted. Jupiter in Cancer is humanism. Cancer is the people. Jupiter is faith in the people, humanism, the return of humanism. For this year, okay, next year Jupiter is in Leo. But so we will retrieve our faith in the people, which is necessary for the things to come, and retrieve our faith in leadership as well. Next year, where Jupiter is going to be in Leo. And then we will lose our faith in leadership because Rahu is going to Aquarius. Um, so now that we understand that something was over nothing, all these rituals over nothing, then there's a lot of outdated knowledge. There's a lot of things that are disintegrating or going missing, a lot of missing knowledge that we can grieve, but we can also appreciate the fact that, hey, those infants and those children that were sacrificed for the so-called superhuman knowledge, the superhuman knowledge was not very yielding. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. Okay, think about it. We have technology that we can go to space, but we cannot feed the planet. Oh, but we sacrificed the planet to go to space. Oh, so what's the use of that technology? Some people can unalive themselves in a spaceship on Mars because they're very lonely and they killed all their partners. Now, Uranus in Taurus in an Earth sign gave us a little bit of an insight as to how we can ground ourselves to get the eurekas. Okay, we ground ourselves, and then we have more connection to the older ease, and then the technology can actually support people. But with those outdated satanic rituals that are also indigenous rituals, okay, then spaceships go Apollo. The Challenger. The Challenger. What was the Challenger thing? That's also Feynman. The gumi. It was very cold. They know it's not the weather for launching, but the rubber, with the changing of the weather, it began to heat up, and then it cracked. It was too cold, and then the heat and cold temperature. You see, Saturn in Aries sign can give that. Saturn is coldness, and Aries is Mars rule, so it's fraction. We can have another Challenger with that one. And they launched it anyway, and Feynman said we can look into the physics of things, but that's the human factor. They knew that this was not good conditions for the launching. But the date was set, and it was an election, and so on. Maybe it was a sacrifice, who knows? Rockets into space. So so this was the human factor. Okay, we had the knowledge, we had the technology. That we sent a spaceship into space with conditions that were too cold to launch because it's immediate heat, and the rubber just cracked, and then it exploded with everybody in that spaceship. Um, So again, this could be think about Mercury as technology, but also as the books. And so, what books did the Nazis burn? Very likely the books that were the inspiration to Mein Kampf. And that's a part of the missing trajectory. It's not just what negated Mein Kampf, but also what inspired it. And what book did we almost burn? Mein Kampf, which tells us what are they doing right now, and what would bring a young artist to do that. So some people see it as merely dabbling into danger, and some people need to remember that the notion that the nature of humanity is tabula rasa. They have dispositions, but also the nature is tabula rasa in the sense that if you give it a good upbringing, they're gonna grow well. You give it a bad upbringing, then you get all kinds of Mein Kampf things. And that's pertaining also to the burning of the books.